No one expected this to happen. Not the Royal Air Force, not the analysts in London, and definitely not the pilots who thought they were untouchable. Because in a series of air exercises, a small Swedish jet did something Britain never saw coming. It outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and some say outright embarrassed, one of the most respected air forces in the world. The United Kingdom just realized it can't catch the Gripen E. For decades, Britain has been one of the global symbols of air power. From the Spitfire in World War II to the Tornado and now the Typhoon, the Royal Air Force has always been synonymous with speed, technology, and dominance. And recently, that dominance evolved into something even more ambitious. The F-35B and the future Tempest fighter program. Billions invested. Decades of legacy. A country proud of its aviation crown. So when a little Swedish jet, built by a nation smaller than London, entered the same skies, nobody expected it to make headlines. Nobody thought it could threaten the UK's top fighters. But the Gripen E isn't just another jet. It's a challenge to the entire idea of what air power should be. In a world obsessed with fifth-generation stealth and billion-dollar budgets, Sweden took another path. While others built bigger and heavier, Saab built something lighter, faster and smarter. The Gripen E is what you'd call the thinking person's fighter. It doesn't rely on brute force. It relies on brain power. It's designed to fight smarter wars, not louder ones. It can launch from a narrow road, refuel in 10 minutes and be back in the air before a typhoon even finishes diagnostics. It was made for chaos, to survive when everything else fails. And in today's Europe, where Russia looms and alliances shift, that kind of adaptability suddenly matters more than ever. When Swedish and British pilots first met in joint training, the tone was respectful, but skeptical. The RAF had seen it all. American stealth, French agility, European power. A small, single-engine Swedish jet didn't exactly sound intimidating.
Experts laughed. "This thing can't compare to our Typhoon," they said. "It's a fourth-generation plane in a fifth-generation world."
But the Swedes didn't flinch. They knew what their jet could do. And when the mock dogfights began, so did the shock. In one-on-one engagements, Gripen started doing the unthinkable, getting behind Typhoons faster than radar operators could react, not by sheer speed but by tactics. Gripen E's advanced electronic warfare suite was scrambling radar locks, its pilots using data fusion and networked sensors to see what others couldn't. The RAF pilots later admitted quietly that it felt like fighting an invisible hand. The Gripen didn't just fly, it predicted. It was always one move ahead. And when analysts broke down the footage, they saw why. The Gripen E's brain, a fully digital mission system, was rewriting the rulebook in real time. Where the Typhoon systems struggled to adapt mid-flight, Gripen was already reprogramming itself, switching frequencies, changing tactics, outsmarting. It wasn't raw power that won, it was intelligence. That was the moment the RAF realized the truth. The future of air combat isn't about who's stealthier or faster. It's about who thinks faster. And Sweden, the so-called underdog, had mastered that game. You could feel the irony. The UK had poured billions into next-generation fighters and was still years away from deploying its future Tempest jet. Meanwhile, Sweden had quietly built something that was already performing like the future at a fraction of the cost. While the F-35 struggles with maintenance and the Typhoon demands full infrastructure support, the Gripen can operate from a supermarket parking lot. It's designed for a nation that expects to fight with its back to the wall and still win. That's not just engineering, that's national psychology. Sweden doesn't build jets for prestige. It builds them for survival. The real shock came when British analysts started comparing readiness levels. The Gripen's cost per flight hour, around 1/10 that of the F-35. Its turnaround time, less than half that of the Typhoon. Its pilots, among the most adaptive in NATO. Suddenly the question wasn't, can the Gripen compete with British jets? And it was, why doesn't Britain have something like this? But the moment that truly sealed the Gripen's legend happened in multinational training exercises. British and Swedish pilots flew side by side against simulated adversaries. And when electronic jamming filled the air, when communication lines went dark and GPS signals failed, the Gripen didn't blink. Its onboard AI and networked systems kicked in, sharing data through encrypted local links. Even without satellites, even under full electronic warfare pressure, Gripen units were still communicating, coordinating, and outmaneuvering. Meanwhile, some of the more advanced aircraft, including those flying with British support, were struggling to stay connected. One observer put it simply, when everyone else went blind, the Gripen still saw everything. The RAF's reaction was mixed: pride, curiosity, and quiet frustration. They weren't angry at Sweden, they were impressed, deeply. Because in that moment, the British military realized that Gripen E wasn't just another jet, it was a design philosophy. It proved that agility and speed of adaptation are more powerful than sheer firepower. It exposed how fragile modern systems can be when pushed to the limits. And it reminded everyone that innovation doesn't always come from the biggest defense budget. Sometimes it comes from the smartest mind in the smallest workshop. Behind closed doors, NATO planners began to take notes. They saw how Gripen's plug-and-play systems allowed for instant upgrades, how its modular weapons bays could switch from air-to-air to air-to-ground missions in minutes, how its software could be rewritten by local engineers, no foreign permission required. In a world where every upgrade for an F-35 must go through Washington, that kind of independence is priceless. And it's something the UK, even as one of NATO's giants, suddenly realized it didn't fully have. But perhaps the biggest revelation was emotional, not technical. Because for years, the UK and other major powers have looked at nations like Sweden with polite admiration, but never fear. Sweden was seen as peaceful, neutral, safe, not a threat. Now that perception has changed. The Gripen E proved that neutrality doesn't mean weakness, it means preparation. It means being ready to fight smart, not just hard. And in an age where war can erupt in minutes, the ability to launch anywhere, adapt instantly, and fight autonomously might be the ultimate advantage. Of course, the RAF still has world-class jets and world-class pilots. No one doubts that. But what the Gripen exposed was something deeper. A philosophical gap. Britain builds for power projection, Sweden builds for survival. One needs perfect conditions, the other creates them. And in the unpredictable wars of tomorrow, that difference could decide who owns the skies. Today, as Sweden joins NATO, the UK stands beside it, but with newfound respect. This once small air force has become a blueprint for resilience. Its jet, dismissed as a lightweight challenger, is now being studied as the model of adaptability.
And every RAF pilot who's flown against a Gripen E knows the truth. You might catch its signal on radar for a second, you might even get close, but matching it? That's another story.
Because while Britain spends billions chasing perfection, Sweden quietly achieved something better: balance. Gripen E isn't about domination, it's about never being caught off guard, never being unprepared, never being caught at all. So the next time a Gripen roars past a typhoon in a training exercise, somewhere deep inside, British pilots will smile and nod. They know what they're seeing. Not just a jet, a message. That, in modern air combat, victory doesn't belong to the biggest spender, it belongs to the fastest thinker. And that's why the UK, for all its power, all its legacy, just realized it can't catch the Gripen E. Sweden didn't build the biggest fighter, it built the smartest. And that might just be the one Britain needs to learn from next.